Welcome to Instruction Discussion, our weekly look at the latest topics and trends in education affecting schools here on Long Island and schools around the world. Whether you're a teacher, parent, or student, listen for tips and strategies to help you navigate the educational landscape. There's a bell. It's time to start today's Instruction Discussion on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Hello, I'm Kevin Boston Hill, and welcome to Instruction Discussion, where each week we will examine a recent trend or development in education and its impact on Long Island. In our country, there are several health conditions that we pay attention to, and rightfully so. Heart health, obesity, mental health, and asthma, just to name a few. Even our schools spend a lot of time educating families about vision and tooth loss. While schools do test for hearing loss, the level of education and access to resources doesn't rival that of other ailments. This issue becomes even more shocking when you consider that 38.2 million Americans aged 12 or older have some amount of hearing loss, and hearing loss is the third most common chronic physical condition in the United States. Hearing loss may not cause students to miss school like asthma does, but it can have the same detrimental impact on academic achievement. What can be done to increase education and access to important resources? Well, one idea that is just underway is making hearing aids available over the counter in addition to prescription. The American Speech Language Hearing Association, ASHA, and the Hearing Loss Association of America, HLAA, feel this is an important game changer for millions of Americans who need the devices. To help us understand the importance of having your hearing checked and what over-the-counter hearing aids will mean for this segment of the population, today we welcome Janice Trent, ASHA Vice President of Audiology Practice, and Barbara Kelley, Executive Director of HLAA. Ladies, welcome to Instruction Discussion on 90.3 WHPC.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Hi, Kevin.
Let's talk a little bit about getting to the background of hearing loss and why it's so important to really understand it. So what are some of the warning signs that people should be looking out for, whether they're older people or younger people? What should they be looking for? What kind of warning signs should they be looking for hearing loss?
Well, typically we're talking about people not understanding what's been said. They hear what's been said, but they don't completely understand it. And that's kind of be the telltale sign of someone with a mild to moderate hearing loss. And that's really what we're here to talk to you today about, mild to moderate hearing losses. But the other side of that is you say something to someone and they don't respond at all. Then that's going to be a pretty good indication that they have a much more severe hearing loss and something that really needs to have action taken with that almost immediately. But our primary concern with mild to moderate hearing loss is recognizing that people have difficulty understanding conversations, that they have difficulty understanding when in the presence of background noise. They have difficulty understanding when people are talking at a distance. Oftentimes the TV or the radio is much louder than it needs to be. Or they have difficulty understanding, or they rely on their partner. So their partner essentially becomes a live hearing aid where they turn to their partner to ask, what did they say all the time? So those are some of the initial signs of hearing loss.
So I guess those are the active signs, because one of the things that you said that they just didn't respond. How do we know the difference between a hearing loss situation and somebody just ignoring the other person?
Well, we don't. But if it happens enough, then that's when you definitely need to go and get a hearing evaluation to find out what's going on.
What should parents and caregivers do as far as having hearing tests done on their children?
Well, I'll just pitch it to our audiologists. Well, the one good thing is the newborn hearing screening program, which is law, I believe, in 50 states. And so babies can now be identified at birth if they have a hearing loss. And it's really important for early intervention, for language, to get sound to them. So that's a great tool the parents have.
And I guess how can parents, you say is law, but can parents also just request that? Or how do they request to have those that audiology test done? Most
of the time, if parents are going to their pediatrician for regular healthy wellness checkups, the pediatrician is going to see it. And then they generally will refer out to an audiologist or to an ear, nose, and throat doctor for an assessment.
I mentioned earlier in the open that one of the resources that is becoming available now for people who have moderate hearing loss is over-the-counter hearing aids. And because we know that hearing aids were designed to support people with their hearing loss, but before they could only get it through a prescription. So that may have prevented some people from actually going and getting this much-needed resource. So what type of change, how is this going to be a game changer for those individuals? And what is it actually going to mean for for people with that moderate hearing loss?
Kevin, I think it's really important for your listeners, because we've been talking about children as well, that the over-the-counter hearing aids are meant only for adults 18 and over with mild to moderate self-perceived hearing loss. So this is new. The FDA has opened up this new category with regulations that will open Monday, October 17th. And it's another pathway to care for maybe adults who it's inaccessible. They can't get to a hearing healthcare provider, or it's not affordable. So this is one way maybe people can take that first step who might need some situational hearings, who might not want to wear hearing aids all day long. But certainly the traditional way of seeing an audiologist or a hearing instrument specialist is also another pathway to care. So this just opens up another option that will be in the mainstream for people, that will put hearing health and hearing loss a little more mainstream, make people aware of it. And you started in your introduction that it's one of the chronic health conditions, but people need to pay attention to their hearing health as part of overall wellness.
And from my vantage point, I'm really hoping that as an audiologist, that this will be the gate that allows them to really look at their hearing loss and to begin to take some action. So much so that when they're ready to get another set of hearing aids, they may seriously consider prescriptive hearing aids, because they do provide extensive benefits, such as being able to add accessories to that for watching the television and talking on the telephone, and a whole bunch of other accessories that they can add that will really enhance their life experiences. But, we know right now that we're only getting about 30% of individuals with hearing loss are actually wearing hearing aids. So something had to be done. And so we're really hoping that this opens the door for more people to be interested in getting hearing aids.
Now, do you think that by making the hearing aids accessible over the counter, that more and more people would actually circumvent the audiologist and kind of do that self-medication type of thing and just say, well, I'm experiencing some amount of hearing loss, so I'm just going to go and pick out the hearing aids over the counter that I see there and pop them in my ears? So do you think that might happen? And what would be the hazard in something like that taking place?
Yeah, I do think that that's probably going to happen. And my biggest concern in terms of hazard is that I'm afraid that they're going to get discouraged because hearing aids are not like, eyeglasses. You just don't pop them on and they work. Oftentimes there's an adjustment period. The brain has got to get adjusted to hearing new sounds. You have got to get accustomed to hearing new sounds and interacting with people, and the sounds in your home are different, and some sounds really get on your nerves and you don't want to wear the hearing aid. Well, with a prescriptively fit hearing aid, you can come into the office and you can tell me, Dr. Trent, I don't like this, and I can go into the program and begin to reduce background noises and those issues that you tell me you're having trouble with. If the hearing aid is whistling, I have the ability to go in and run what's called a feedback manager and really get rid of some of that whistling. So I'm concerned that people might try it and get discouraged, return it, and not do anything else. And so our big push from the American Speech and Hearing Association's point of view is, hey, this is great, but don't let this be the first and only stop. So if you're dissatisfied with your experience, if something's not right, by all means, come and see an audiologist. But we really want you to come and see us first, to be quite honest, and get a hearing evaluation first, and then you can go out.
Barbara, did you want to chime in on that one?
Well, the thing that I'm really excited about is I don't ever remember hearing health and hearing loss being in the news so much that it is now. And that's a good thing, that people start paying attention to their hearing health. And, I just want to tell people that if they go to their primary care doctor, especially if they're over 50, and they say something like, doctor, I'm having a little trouble hearing, they might get the response of, don't worry about it. It's a normal part of aging. You don't need to do anything about it till it gets worse. Well, I say, stop, don't run. Go check in to see what can be done for your hearing loss, because there are things you can do, and it's better to take that first step. I mean, everything we do in life, our relationships, our connections, our work life, is all through what we hear. And when that starts to diminish, we start to pull back and isolate because it's too hard. So there is something you can do about your hearing loss.
I know, and I hear that there are some doctors who will say, well, deal with it as far as you can manage it. And because if they feel that if they're using some other coping strategies, like you said, having a loved one who kind of translates for them and is that hearing aid, that live hearing aid for them, or if there's something they can just manage it, then they don't need to worry about it until it becomes unmanageable for them. What do you say to that?
Well, very often a mild hearing loss is not enough of a disruption. People often manage very well with a mild hearing loss. And that's where maybe they need just a little situational hearing, maybe in a meeting at work or in a noisy restaurant, where an over-the-counter product just might be the ticket for that.
But on the other side, I will tell you that there are some people that have mild hearing loss. When I do an impairment assessment, I discover that they are really impaired by this mild hearing loss. So everyone is really different. And that's why I said we need to have the conversation, because what's an impairment for you may not be an impairment for someone else. And so we have to find out where they are so that we can appropriately design an audiological plan, a hearing healthcare plan that will help them to communicate effectively.
So what do we think that the cost is going to be associated with these over-the-counter hearing aids?
Well, at the present time, we're speculating that the over-the-counter hearing aids will be less than $1,000 a pair, maybe $300 for one. We don't really know, but that's the expected cost of the hearing aids.
Okay, and I guess since it's over the counter, they don't necessarily need to go through their insurance carrier or anything like that to get them. They can just walk into before I say they can walk into any drugstore, where will these be made available? Will it be at the local CVS or Rite Aid, or will it be someplace else they have to go?
Right here, over the counter, what means drugstores, electronic stores, the big box stores will all have them available.
Right, electronic stores. So next to the place where they may get their Beats headphones, they can also pick up a set of hearing aids.
Yeah.
And that's what we look to see as we look to see innovation. We don't know a couple years from now what these devices would look like, because electronic companies will get into this area.
Let me take it back a little bit and go back into the education realm, because tell to us a little bit about what is the connection between hearing and speech.
Oh, wow. That's going way back. That's audiology, speech language pathology 101 almost. We know that the ear is specifically tuned to receive the frequencies of speech. Isn't that unique? So that when you speak, the ear can really pick up what you say extremely well. And so we know that as a baby in infancy hears all the goo goo and gaga and all the words coming to them, their language is received receptively. You are developing language, but they need to hear it in order to develop language, so that's that thing where you can tell a toddler, go pick up that stick. They can't talk to you, but they know what you said and they can go get it. But then as they get older, we begin to see the expression come out so that they're no longer just receiving the information, they're beginning to talk. And that's just that wonderful, wonderful interaction between hearing and speech. Now, in a situation where there are other situations coming on. Maybe they're deaf. There are really other avenues that we use. But in general, when we're talking about hearing and speech 101, that's really what we're talking about. And so we want to make sure that we're developing that along the milestones that have been established for speech and language development.
You are listening to Instruction Discussion on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Kevin Boston Hill, and our guests today are Janice Trent, ASHA Vice President of Audiology Practice, and Barbara Kelley, Executive Director of HLAA. Ladies, again, either one of you can answer this question, but where can our listeners get even more information so they can find out about the benefits of the over-the-counter hearing aids or just hearing aids in general and the importance of going to see an audiologist on a regular basis?
Well, from that perspective, we're going to send you to the American Speech, Language, and Hearing Association's website, and that's going to be www.asha.org. You can click under OTCs to learn about the over-the-counter hearing aids, but you can also look further into the site to find out about hearing aids in general.
And our organization, the Hearing Loss Association of America, you can go to hearingloss.org/OTC. And you can also find out some more information about us and our public policy efforts and our local chapters across the country and our Walk for Hearing in 20 cities across the country. And I think the message that, we all want to say is that when someone is diagnosed with a hearing loss, they think they're the only person in the world, but they're not. There are many. So people are not alone.
Yeah, I think there's a large number. I think I mentioned earlier is about 38.2 million Americans 12 and over have some form of hearing loss. And because we tend to think of hearing loss as an old people's problem. But
right.
and rightfully so. I mean, there's a certain amount of hearing loss that does occur as you get older. But what are some of the other health issues that may occur as a result of hearing loss?
Well, one of the things we think is that early onset of Alzheimer's or dementia, some of those things, there are a whole bunch of comorbidities that we are associating. And when we can get amplification on individuals earlier, we find that they do much better.
And a big comorbidity with hearing loss is falls. Mm-hmm. And falls are the number one reason that seniors go to the emergency room. And we know from COVID that isolation has its downsides. It's not good to be not connected with people. And when you have a hearing loss, you often withdraw. It's just too hard and too exhausting to try to communicate. So it's better really to treat hearing loss and do what you can to mitigate those comorbidities.
So when we think about, again, going back to the over-the-counter hearing aids, when we think about people who are kind of self-medicating, if you will, and they think of how they can treat their hearing loss by just turning the volume up on the stereos or things of that nature, or they have the earbuds in their ears, and we'll talk about the hazards of that in a moment. But you think about just turning the volume up, is that going to be more detrimental than solving the problem initially?
Probably more detrimental because now we're talking about noise exposure. If you turn it up too loud, then you could also risk maybe a temporary threshold shift, maybe a gradual threshold shift in your hearing. And so that's always a major concern that we have. And just self-medication is not always a great try. I know a lot of people want to do it, but you've got so many resources out here, both consumer resources and professional resources that can help you to make very intelligent decisions without just trying to rely on your own knowledge.
And I don't know if you know the actual, the physical makeup of these hearing aids, but can people adjust the volume on them themselves, or how do they actually work?
Yes, they are going to have a volume dial on them. Yes, so they will have the opportunity to do that.
And so now, I guess, goes back to the previous question almost. What is the kind of the hazard in allowing people to do that? And because I would assume that if they're going to be able to kind of control that volume, they may do it out of control. And so we did work out with the FDA that in the design that we were able to put some limits on what the hearing aids will do. And so hopefully that will, mitigate concerns like that.
And there is a certain point where if you turn up the volume too loud, the sound is so distorted that a hearing aid wouldn't help.
Okay. And I guess at that point, then people would say, well, if I need to turn it up so loud, I need to go get ahead and get my hearing checked, go see an audiologist and see what's really wrong.
There you go.
Okay. What can parents and caregivers, or even just people who are concerned about hearing loss, what are some of the things that they can start thinking about doing as a preventative measure?
Protect your hearing.
Yeah.
I mean, we know that noise-induced hearing loss is completely preventable, and it's 100% completely irreversible. And, if you're sitting next to somebody who has those earbuds or headphones and you can hear that noise coming out, that's too loud. And we often hear people say, I came out of a concert and I had that muffled feeling. That's already chipping away at your hearing. There's inner hair cells that are being damaged, and it could happen suddenly, but it could happen over time. So it's really important to protect your hearing.
And just in terms of your caregivers, I think caregivers just need to be very mindful of the individuals that they're taking care of. And certainly if you're seeing that conversation is more cumbersome because you have to repeat what you say, if you notice that the individuals you're caring for are becoming more isolated, unwilling to talk on the phone with dear family and friends, unwilling to go on Zoom maybe and participate in all the different kinds of programs, Bible study, anything that they could be doing online. If they're not doing it, then that's a pretty good indication, maybe a good indication that they're having real problems hearing. And so then the first step you want to do is to get them someplace that they can have their ears examined to make sure it's not just wax, then have a hearing test, and then make sure that they're getting the kind of care that they can receive. I have seen some fun responses from individuals who brought their seniors in, and they looked like they were just the early stages of dementia, and I put hearing aids on, and they're eyes open and their back straighten up, and they're like, is this all it was? I can hear. I'm good to go. So I really think it's important that we recognize the importance of hearing loss, recognize its impact on the family as well as the individual, and then take those steps necessary to make sure that they are able to hear, whether that's with an over-the-counter, mild to moderate hearing loss, or with a prescriptive hearing loss if they indeed have hearing loss that's worse than mild to moderate.
And I think Dr. Trent, you did mention this a little bit earlier, but what would be the side-by-side difference between the over-the-counter hearing aid and a prescriptive one?
The over-the-counter one, you are self-fitting. So you don't have an audiogram that you're looking to see what degree of hearing loss you have and trying to fit the right level of hearing. You just take a questionnaire or do a couple of things and you determine what you want, and then you go get a mild to moderate hearing loss. On the more prescriptive, and they're going to determine the shape of your hearing. Maybe you need a hearing aid that provides more power in the high frequencies, not so much in the low frequencies. That's the traditional hearing aid. But there are other people who have a different shape hearing loss, where they have a low frequency hearing loss and a rise, and the hearing is great in the high frequency. So the shape can have a lot to do with it. And then we know that these hearing aids are largely going to be behind the ear. They're not going to be custom. They're not going to be available as a custom fit. Many people don't want the devices that are hanging behind their ear, and they can actually go and see an audiologist who can make a ear mold impression. I now have 3D imaging in my office, so they can make an image of the inner ear, the inside of the ear canal, and design hearing aids for them that are really quite invisible. So you can't get that with the over-the-counter hearing aids. You're kind of locked into pretty much one style. I will say that the FDA did make sure that the over-the-counter hearing aids cannot go too deeply in the canal, but they can go in, but there are some precautions which were good. Also, when I put a hearing aid in, I can actually go in and see whether the hearing aid is doing what I think it's going to do by doing something called real ear measurements. And you can't really do that with the over-the-counter hearing aids. Well, I could, but typically as part of the basic audiological assessment, when we're fitting hearing aids, we do that inclusively. So now we can guarantee that the patient is hearing what we hope they can hear. And if they're not, we can tweak it and make it better right away, or we can say, this isn't working, let's get something else. And so I think those are the kind of variables that we're looking at. But here again, we just want to open the door to let people hear. And so that's what the over-the-counter hearing aids are doing. They're opening the door to give other people an opportunity who were in the past hesitant to do anything about it. And that's the purpose of the over-the-counter hearing aids.
So what type of outreach is the Hearing Loss Association of America doing in the realm of hearing loss to really educate not only the older section of the population, but those who are younger? Because as you said, the hearing loss is something that's cumulative. It's not something, and once it happens, it's irreversible. So what education or what measures are being taken to really educate the younger population so that they can protect it as long as possible?
Well, one of the ways we find out is you meet people where they are. So we've been focusing a lot on digital media and reaching people that way, reaching younger people, because it's just not an older person's condition. We also have a communication access program in the workplace. We also have a communication access program in healthcare facilities. So just trying to meet people where they are. And certainly we can't reach everybody. And that's why we like to partner with organizations like ASHA. And there's a lot of work to be done, and we need to keep doing it.
Ladies, and you can take each one of you. I want to give you a little opportunity to speak. But if you had to leave our audience with one final thought about the importance of getting your hearing tested and the role of going to see an audiologist, what would that thought be? Don't wait.
Don't wait till hearing loss disrupts your life and you've lost your job and you've lost your spouse, or just go now.
And we've talked about this earlier, that, you have no trouble going to the doctor and getting your blood pressure checked, having your lungs examined. These things you don't even think about. Of course, you're going to have that done. You even get your eyes tested. But for some reason, people get hesitant about just going to get their hearing evaluated. And that is such a crucial part of living. And so what we're really collectively trying to encourage folks to understand is that hearing is vital. And we really want people to get out and come out from under the cloud and understand that it's okay to have a hearing loss. And there are ways that we can help you to get back into the game and to be much more vital in all of your communication environments, whether it's at home, at work, wherever you are. And that is our goal for you.
Ladies, we definitely would like to thank both of you for coming on to our show today. We'd like to thank, of course, Janice Trent, ASHA Vice President of Audiology Practice, and Barbara Kelley, the Executive Director of HLAA, for coming on to our show today. Ladies, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Once again, my name is Kevin Boston Hill, and thank you all for listening to Instruction Discussion right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.